When it comes to series crossover in video games, the subject matter is pretty much a commonplace thing, what with series such as Super Smash Bros., the ever-popular Marvel vs. Capcom, Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and Project Cross Zone all being widely available worldwide. However, fans of anime or tokusatsu shows, which are really just shows featuring costume superheroes such as the Power Rangers, have missed out on a nice crossover series called the Compati Hero series. The Compati Hero series usually features characters from Ultraman, Gundam, Kamen Rider, and the Banpresto original character Fighter Roar. The series also spans multiple genres such as sports, fighting, beat-em-ups, and action shooters. It's also available on multiple consoles, starting back with the Famicom. The most prominent sub-series that falls under the Compati Hero series umbrella is SD The Great Battle, and this is SD The Great Battle 2 Last Twin Fighter. Right off the bat, the first thing that you'll notice is that the art style isn't exactly what you'd expect from a video game featuring characters from the series mentioned earlier on. This art style is known as SD, which is where the SD in the title comes from, and stands for Super Deformed, which just means that the art style features characters with heads much larger than you'd usually expect, and cutesy proportions overall. This art style doesn't detract from the game in any way though, since the overall story seems to be a little bit more on the comedic side. Now, while I won't pretend that I know the actual storyline of the game since I'm not fluent in Japanese and details for the Great Battle series are pretty sparse online, the cutesy cutscenes and anime emoticons pair perfectly with the SD art style. Overall, the graphics are pretty decent for the game. While they aren't exactly the best of the best featured on the Super Nintendo, they do get the job done, with vibrant colors and pretty sharp details scattered throughout. The animations, however, are pretty stiff, or at least they're not as over the top as something you would expect from a game of this style. The gameplay is pretty standard fare and what you would expect from a beat-em-up from this generation, with the button to punch, kick, jump, and a special attack that's done by holding the punch button for a few seconds. The special attack is pretty much your usual HP draining move that's a risk or reward type deal that can get you out of sticky situations if used correctly. You've also got a secondary special move that's powered up by purple orbs dropped by enemies and can be used as a screen clearing bomb. You may want to save this for boss battles, but it just depends on the situation that you're in at the current time. There are also weapons that you can pick up, such as giant axes, that help you get a bit of an edge on the enemy as far as damage goes, and there are also grapple attacks. However, it seems that the strange decision was made that you can't pick up and toss an enemy unless they're already lying on the ground unconscious. If you try to walk up and grab an enemy while they're still standing up and in fighting condition, you'll most likely just stun lock them for a little bit, letting you get in a few hits. I'm sure, as you've already seen, there was no fighter select screen at the beginning of the game, and I've been switching between characters throughout the gameplay so far. You do this by pressing the select button. And while that's great that you can switch characters mid-game, not letting you have to worry about who to choose to go through the duration of the game with, it doesn't seem like there's really any actual difference between the characters' playstyles, other than just graphical differences with their super bomb attacks or special moves. The Great Battle 2 does feature co-op, and while that should be an expected feature in most beat-em-ups, there are quite a few Super Nintendo beat-em-ups that don't feature co-op, so that's definitely a plus. The difficulty of the game isn't that harsh, however there are some cheap shots and frustrating moments to be had. Most of this seems to be due to Not what I would call input lag, but just animations not finishing when you would think they would. I haven't had any issues with pressing a button and having an attack come out 2 to 3 seconds afterwards. However, some animations seem to have a longer finishing window, and when you think your character is done with them, you still don't have a chance to input any actual movement. This causes you to get hit by flying projectiles or attacks that you normally would have been able to move since you could see them a mile away. Your characters also seem to have a pretty long hit stun time when you're sent flying by an enemy. This can lead to issues on stages that have hazards or platforming elements, causing you to go careening off the stage, losing a huge chunk of health. When it comes to moments like that, I would have definitely liked one of the buttons to have a blocked feature map to them, or at least some sort of counterattack power-up. The bosses that show up at the end of each stage seem to be pretty straightforward, with no real deviations in the standard attacks that you'd see from normal enemies. Although they have a bit more HP, you don't really have to pull out all the stops when fighting against them, and as long as you plan your attacks carefully, you should make it out just fine. Overall, the Great Battle 2's gameplay is just average. It doesn't exactly feel bad, but at the same time it's not really a standout in the genre either. The soundtrack is probably one of the Great Battle 2's better features though. It fits perfectly with each situation and can span from heroic to hectic. Of course, it won't hit any of the top 10 lists of Super Nintendo music anytime soon. It is enjoyable to listen to within the game. Unfortunately, the sound effects aren't exactly on the same path as the soundtrack. The punches, hits, and various attacks don't seem like they have too much impact behind them, and the lack of death cries or taunts are kind of surprising in a 16-bit beat 'em up. All in all, the Great Battle 2 isn't a bad beat 'em up, but it's not great either. And I'm not sure if it's just because it might have been an earlier Super NES title, or just an earlier title in the line of the series, but it could have used a little bit more polish here and there. Things expected such as the different characters actually having different effects, and of course the lag time between switching characters, and just animation lag between actual moves, just seems like it was something that could have been alleviated with just a little bit more development time. Those issues, combined with the frustration of falling into a pit or a hazard that you would have normally avoided due to being sent flying by an enemy and having a lengthy stun time, make this game a little hard to recommend to just about any beat-em-up fan. However, if you're a fan of anime or tokusatsu and a beat-em-up fan, you may want to give this a shot. It's not exactly hard to find on Amazon or eBay, and it's not exactly expensive, so it won't really break the bank. So if you've tried all the rest of the beat-em-ups and are looking for something just a little bit different, why not give it a shot?